Welcome back in. It's Jeff Hansen. We're talking BYU football again, and we're going to talk about something that I love. BYU recruiting. I love recruiting. I've covered recruiting forever. Before I was officially covering recruiting, I was blogging about recruiting with Mitch Harper way back before either one of us, had any sort of a platform. Then we went to Rivals. We were at Rivals for a few years. I just hit my 6th season at 24/7 Sports now. Recruiting's what I've done for the better part of a decade. Really, really enjoy recruiting. And something is coming with BYU's recruiting that I've never seen before. In all of my time covering it, there is a bigger opportunity in the class of 2026 than I have ever seen for BYU football. All right, so let's talk about a few things before we get into the nitty-gritty. Why am I already talking about the class of 2026? The class of 2025 doesn't sign until December, and then eventually in February when they have the last national signing day. Why are we talking about 2026 already? The recruiting calendar changed on us this year, right? Summer official visits are a thing. They were a thing last cycle, but it was kind of a new thing that was sort of a hodgepodge thrown together, and it got approved really quickly, I think, in the spring, and then all of a sudden there were visits happening that summer. This was the first real cycle that you could see schools were preparing for summer visits. They were figuring out what that meant. Players were preparing for summer visits. You've got the early signing period as well. You've got all these things happening. There are less uncommitted players today than I ever remember seeing. I mean, right now, the class of 2025, it feels like you're in between the early signing period and the final signing period. I mean, it feels like it's January. I mean, that's how many players went on their officials during the summer. That's how many players committed, found their homes. There's just not a lot left. So it's easy for me to start to look ahead and look to the future. There's still things that have to happen in 2025, and BYU is far from done, but I've started to mentally prepare for 2026 as well. Why? Because this is the season. If this calendar holds true, these 2026 recruits are going to visit BYU during, game days this fall, this season. Then spring's going to roll around. They're going to take summer official visits, and a lot of those 2026 players will start making their commitments next summer before the 2025 season even happens. So in a lot of ways, this 2024 football season is the season that BYU has to show well, do well, and make some kind of an impression for these 2026 recruits. It's different. It's weird. Maybe I'll be dead wrong, but based on what I have seen and the changes to the recruiting calendar that we've seen so far, that's what I think is going to happen. I think that this season is huge. It's critical. BYU has got to show really, really well in order to have success next summer. Crazy. That's just where we're at. So we're not just ignoring the class of 2025, but I am looking at the class of 2026, and I am seeing more potential, more high-quality players that are in BYU's traditional recruiting footprint, right? That's members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's local talent, along the Wasatch Front. That's Hawaii. That's where BYU traditionally has recruited, right? I mean, I don't think there's any debate about that. More talent than I have ever seen coming out of that recruiting footprint. Let's just start talking through it. I want to rattle through some of these names. We'll get into a bunch. In total, I've got a list of 34 different players that are either members of the church or playing across the Wasatch Front that are in this 2026 recruiting class that already have P4 offers. 34. These are guys that they're not signing until next year, right? These are juniors in high school, 34 of them, and not just barely have P4 offers. And I'm not even counting BYU. These are other than BYU offers, right? This is how good this class is. You've got Ryder Lyons. I think he's the number 2 quarterback by most metrics right now. Some people have him as the number 1. He's a dog. He's going to be a 5-star. He is on some networks, 24/7 Sports. We've got him as a 4-star now. We've only awarded 5 stars so far. Ryder Lyons will become a 5-star quarterback. He's the real deal. Pick a school. He's got an offer from all of them. He was at BYU for the Southern Illinois game. That's big. BYU's got a strong relationship with him. The collective's been involved. Everybody's been involved. Ryder Lyons has been involved with all of them, had conversations with everybody. BYU has done the things that you have to do if you're going to land one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Does that mean BYU is going to do it? I don't know. There's still a lot of time and a lot of things that have to be figured out. But Ryder Lyons, he's the real deal. Brock Harris will also be a 5-star. Tight end out of St. George, grew up a BYU guy. He's the real deal. Celesi Moa. BYU's got 2 Moas on the team already. Celesi Moa is going to be borderline 5-star. He might get just over that cusp. If not, he's going to be a high 4-star. He's got a couple of brothers that are already on the team. Bot Mulitalo out of Lone Peak High School. He's going to be right there with Celesi Moa. I think he probably ends up as a high 4-star. Maybe he climbs into that 5-star range, but he's the real deal. All of these guys, pick a school. They've got offers from all of them. That's the top end. But then you've still got guys inside our top 24/7, our top 247 players. Those are the 4 or 5-star type talents. You've got Samu Mwala, member of the church. Malachi Lee, member of the church. Helaman Kasuga, Caleb Tafua, Eason Tafa, Tate Reynolds. I mean, all of these guys are members of the church or play locally in the state of Utah. So that's 9. That's 9 that I rattled off inside the top 24/7. For BYU, say you get 5. That would be unreal. If BYU landed 5 top 247 players, that's unprecedented. That is something that BYU has never done before. Other schools have done that. Alabama has done that. Georgia does that. USC does that. BYU's never done something like that. Even that famous, now infamous class of 2010 with Jake Heaps, Ross Oppo, those guys. There weren't 5 top 24/7 players there. That's good. That's the potential to get 2, maybe 3 5-stars. I mean, that's elite level recruiting stuff. That's the kind of stuff that gets you in a top 20, into the top teens in terms of recruiting classes. And we're not done. Now you get into just the high 3-star. I say just the high 3-star. You get into just the high 3-star range. Tate Reynolds, he's already committed to Clemson, so maybe you take him off the board. Taden Kava at Orem High School. Kawe Akana, he's going to be a 4-star. He's right there. Jaron Pula, Keenan Pula out of Timpview, the Twins. BYU knows them well. They've been to BYU a ton of times. They're elite wide receivers. From Alabama to Washington and everybody in between, they've got a bunch of scholarship offers. Kai Wesley out of Orem, Jack Utz in Kansas, Isaiah Wong, he's a legacy guy out of Hawaii. Jax Tanner, member of the church. These guys are all rated 87 and higher. This is one of the most unreal classes that I have ever seen in terms of what it brings and what it could bring for BYU. So I've gone through half the names. I've missed PJ Taki, Ifo Pili Jr. Yes, that Ifo Pili. Ami Mawala out of Bingham, Isa Gallia. I mean, we could keep going. There's so many. Nehemiah Colone out of Oklahoma. All of these players have Power 4 offers from big-time programs, and all of these players fit BYU's regular recruiting pool. The opportunity that sits in front of Kalani Sitake, Aaron Roderick, and Jay Hill in the class of 2026 is the kind of thing that could set BYU as a program up for years to come. This is the kind of foundational class that they have to capitalize on. Now, I've been a big proponent of BYU's recruiting improvements over the last couple of years, but I've also been very transparent. They have been incremental improvements. Last year's class, the class of 2024, was the strongest BYU class that they've had in 10 or 15 years. It was a great a celebratory class. BYU should have celebrated because they have done something that they had not done in 10 or 15 years. That's worth celebrating. But I was also, I said it on this channel. I said it on BYU TV. I wrote about it in a bunch of different places. I said it everywhere. It was also a bottom quarter class in the Big 12 conference. Okay. It was great for BYU, but if BYU is going to get where BYU wants to go, it wasn't good enough. They had to make improvements. So far this year, they lack the 4 stars. They lack the top end, but there's more quality talent from top to bottom than there was even in the year prior. This year's recruiting class is a very strong class. It's not elite. It's not fantastic, but it's very strong so far. It's incremental improvement. The class of 2026, you throw incremental improvement away. It doesn't matter anymore for BYU. This class, the class of 2026, BYU simply must hit home runs. They can't take base hits anymore. They can't settle for incremental improvement in the class of 2026 because the opportunity is so big and so great that BYU could really fast track their ascension into the Power Four by having a strong showing in the 2026 class. So, how do they do that? They got to show well on the field this year. They got to do something both offensively and defensively. Show something that players can believe in. Show something that players are going to say, hey, that's a program that can develop me and take me where I want to go. Donors have to step up across the board. The $20 donations to the collective and the $1 million donations to the collective. We can debate about it. We can say whether it's right or wrong, whether it should or shouldn't be a thing. But at the end of the day, NIL and money, that's going to be an important component. When you start talking about 5-star quarterbacks, when you start talking about 4-star players inside the top 24/7, when you start talking about competing against Alabamas and Washingtons and these powerhouse programs across the country, yeah, BYU is going to have a bunch of money to work with. That's just the nature of what things are. That's just the nature of what college athletics is today. Now, we've seen from the basketball side that there's an appetite from the donor base, from the school even, to get into that NIL space and play that game, which is phenomenal. BYU has to do it on the football side as well. That includes, like I said, that includes all of us. That includes me. That includes you. That includes any BYU fan who wants success. We got to step up and do our part. I hate that we have to. I hate that fans are being asked to fund this stuff. I think it's ridiculous. But it is what it is, and other fans of other programs are going to do it if BYU is going to compete and we want to get the results that BYU fans want to see. If we want to see those results, we also have to step up and do our part. Coaches got to do their part. Coaches have got to make it very clear to donors, but also to everybody else, that they will not be outworked on the recruiting trail. Whether that's for a quarterback or a defensive tackle, coaches have to make it clear, have to have a plan that will dictate and show that they will not be outworked and that they will be able to take the success, whether it's money, donations, whatever it is, and convert that into commitments from players on this list. The class of 2026 is one of the most impressive classes in BYU's recruiting footprint that I've ever seen. The opportunity that it presents is enormous, and it truly is a fast track to success in the Big 12. You get a few of these players and you build a program around them and you develop those players. And now BYU can start talking about, hey, we've got the requisite amount of talent to compete in the Big 12, not just participate in the Big 12. We're no longer talking about, I think BYU can get back to a bowl game. You start having conversations of BYU, if they do this, they do that, they could maybe start competing for championships. It's what it's going to take. It's going to take recruiting. At the end of the day, it's going to have to. BYU has to recruit better than they have. Incremental improvement is great and it should be celebrated. But when an opportunity like this one arises, BYU has to hit a home run. Kalani Sitake and his coaching staff have to hit a home run in the class of 2026. That started on Saturday against Southern Illinois when Ryder Lyons showed up to the stadium, when Celesi Moa was in the stadium, when Kawe Akana was in the stadium. The guys that we're talking about in 2025, those players are showing up to game day. They're taking in the atmosphere. They're being recruited today, and it is paramount for BYU to show well and land a lot of these players. I don't know what the number is at this point, but you've got to land a lot. You've got to land a third of these players. If you land 10 players of this caliber, it changes your program. Recruiting's the real deal. We're going to watch it. Recruiting's a ton of fun to follow. I'm going to have it all covered here. Appreciate you guys for sticking around with me. Until next time, folks, give them hell. Go Cougs.